This is the ZOTAC MEK1, and in this video we're going to be talking about what's inside it, its overall layout and performance, and of course if it's worth buying and if I would put it on my desk, so let's take a look. Starting off with a tour of the exterior. Basically everything on the exterior is plastic kind of overmolding over the aluminium frame. The actual aluminium frame itself is fairly basic, it's pretty boxy, but obviously with this plastic, all the plastic extrusions on top, it does look pretty nice. You do have Rgb lighting all the way around on both sides of the side panels, and that can be controlled with the Spectra software, which I'll talk about a bit later. I would mention that in terms of the design of especially the side panels, both side panels have these sort of louvers on them, sort of fins if you like, which do have some space on the back of them for ventilation, but it is pretty restricted and pretty limited, especially considering that there's no airflow in the front, and obviously airflow out the back is exhaust, so the extra, you know, kind of space in the back here and the panel on the, or the space on the bottom or on the top for the other side is really all the air you're going to get in the chassis. Now on this left hand side or right hand side, depending on which way you're looking at it, side panel, you have that space along the bottom. This actually has two small, like 80-ish mil fans on it to draw air in towards the CPU, and actually inside you do have a decently sized CPU cooler on the i5-7400 chip that's in here. It's on a fairly proprietary motherboard, so bear that in mind if you are planning on buying this and then upgrading it in the future. And you do have full-size DDR4 RAM DIMMs, two of them, to provide 16 gigs of DDR4 memory for this specific machine. On the other side, you actually have that ventilation hole on the top, and that's because behind that is the graphics card. It's a full-length blower-style GPU. This one is a GTX 1060 6GB, although you can get this in different configurations, and I believe the black version of this has a lower spec, something like a 1050 or 1050 Ti, so bear that one in mind when you are looking at picking one of these up if you are. You can obviously upgrade the graphics card relatively easily. I would only mention that the power requirements and the power supply that's in here seems to only have a 6 or 8 pin available, so just keep that in mind if you are planning on upgrading, although there may be some extra cables buried in there that you can find and potentially use in the future. As for the rest of the internal layout, it seems like it's doing a decent enough job considering the relatively stranglehold of the ventilation that this system has. So in terms of temperatures, the CPU is running about 60 degrees, which is actually pretty good under gaming load, and the GPU is running about 80 degrees, which is basically the temperature target for those sorts of GPUs anyway, especially that kind of really basic reference blower style design, so I'm not too worried about that. It was a little bit on the noisy side just from the graphics card, but of course you can replace that if you fancy, or you can just not worry about it too much, or I guess turn your settings down. But yeah, you can also use the Firestorm software to change things like your fan profile if you want to cool the card a bit more or overclock it a bit more, so those options are available. And as I mentioned, you can also change the Rgb lighting with the Spectra software, which you can hopefully see on screen. Jumping to the back of the case, you have your full set of rear I/O. You have your power supply pass-through at the top, which is a little bit strange. You're most likely to see that at the bottom, but either way it's there. You also have your graphics card I/O in the middle, which is fairly standard for a 1060, you know, a couple of display ports, HDMI, DVI. In terms of your motherboard I/O, you have two Wi-Fi aerials, two USB 2 ports and a PS2 combo port, 4 USB 3 ports, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, and 7.1 audio with SPDIF. It's actually kind of surprising to see a total of 3 kind of internet options here, or connectivity options, but it is nice to see, and you can use it as a semi-workstation, even though it's definitely aimed at the more gaming market. Speaking of gaming, let's take a look at the performance results. Now I would mention that I normally run GTA 5 on these benchmarks, but for some reason, and no matter how many times I install Windows 10 on this PC, it always installs Windows 10 Home N, which is a very restricted version of Windows, and actually doesn't come with a lot of the core essential functionality that an operating system should do, including the media pack, which GTA needs, the MF read write DLL, which was completely missing, and every time I installed the media pack that should be suitable for that operating system, it just didn't work. And I've tried basically every media pack, I've tried all of the support forums and everything, and I physically cannot get it to run, so unfortunately I won't be able to do that benchmark for you, but here is the rest of them. Starting with the 3D Mark Firestrike scores, we're looking at about 9,200 points for 1080p, about 5,100 for 1440p, and about 2,800 for 4K, which isn't too bad. Dirt Rally looking at 70 FPS on ultra settings at 1080p, 51 for 1440 and 26 for 4K, which which, as I'll speak about in a second, shows that this is definitely a 1080p, maybe 1440p machine, definitely not looking at 4K. Unity in Heaven is 94 FPS, 53 and 22, which again are pretty respectable scores. So even without the GTA 5 benchmark, you can see that it's a pretty impressive machine. Of course, it's definitely aimed at the 1080p, 1440p market. This isn't a 4K machine, and you're probably not even going to want to run it at 1440p that much. It depends what games you're playing and the settings you're playing on, but generally speaking, I would personally say this is more of a 1080p machine, but it still does a decent job. I would mention though that obviously with the 7400 being the CPU in here, and while you technically could upgrade it, at least it looks like you can, the fact that you can get a similar system with a 6-core hyper-threaded CPU and probably in the area of still a 1060, maybe even a 1070 for the same sort of price as this, it does make it a little bit difficult to wholly recommend. Of course, with the ZOTAC's kind of EN Magnus, like the 1060, EN 1060, that sort of really small form factor system where you really can't make that yourself, that does command a price premium because it's a form factor you cannot get on your own. But with this sort of thing, it's a pretty big machine. I mean, I had my phone up next to it and obviously you can see it next to me. It's not a small machine, and while it's a nice semi-compact form factor, you can get plenty of aftermarket cases like the Fractal Design Node 605 and have it on its side, and that will do plenty fine for a machine this size, or even the Dan Case A4, where again you're going to get a very similar sort of form factor with a pretty similar, if not better, price for the same sort of hardware, or again, if you go with the same sort of price, better hardware. So that brings us on to, would I have this on my desk? Well, personally, I don't think this one's for me. The form factor for me doesn't really give me anything more than a custom PC can, and while you can get, obviously it's a pre-built system, so there's some kind of benefit to that for some people. You can get plenty of people like Overclockers UK to build you systems in a similar form factor, and there's plenty of custom PC builders all around the world that you can pick from if you're not necessarily, in the UK or whatever. So for me, I can't necessarily wholly recommend it. It's still an interesting system, and in terms of its performance and in terms of its thermals, actually, especially for the CPU, it's certainly worth something like a silver award, but in general, I wouldn't say that this is a wholly recommended product just because of its pricing and its kind of interesting form factor. But that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Is this the sort of system you're dreaming of? Is this the form factor you're after, or is this something that you're not really that interested in and you'd rather build your own? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you'd like to know any more about the system and take a look at pricing when and where you watch this, take a look at the link in the description down below. Down there is also a couple of links to stuff like my Patreon, where you can support me directly and keep me making these videos. You can also use the Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links when you're buying from those places. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out massively, so I'd really appreciate it if you could use those, and to those who are using them, thank you very much. You can also check out the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and the bell icon for notifications, because apparently that's a thing. You can also check out the other videos that are over here for you, and otherwise that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.